Welcome to Truths with Food, the podcast where we stop fighting food and start addressing the deeper story of what you suspect is going on but can't put your finger on. Because the focus on food is a waste of your precious time, resources, and life.
And so one of the things that this has made me think about is this was the body I was always meant to have. Because that's part of my life. Because my body is such an intrinsic part of who I am, my soul in this life was always meant to have this body with all the things that are great about it and I love about it and all the things that I don't love about it.
I'm your host, Ali Shapiro, an integrated health expert with a 19-year proven track record of client success. I'm a 33-year and counting cancer survivor and creator of the research-based Truths with Food framework that came out of my own personal experience from recovering from cancer and yo-yo dieting. Because you name it, I had tried it. I also have a master's degree from the University of Pennsylvania. I'm affectionately called people's last best resort and a coach's coach as people come to me when they've tried everything and nothing's worked long-term. This show is where we quiet the noise so we can go deep to get you the results you deserve. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute personal, individual, or medical advice. Now on to the show. So today's episode is one of my favorite of this year. Sas Petherick, my dear friend and colleague of 10 plus years, returns to the Truths with Food podcast for our sixth and final installment of our body story series. And Sas did not disappoint, as usual. You know, I have a developmental background, which is a way of saying, how do people really grow and expand and change? And so does Sas. And it's very rare to have someone who has that sort of background, who is in this food body space. And while Sas, that is not where her work is, she's gone through this process. And so it was really wonderful to be able to have a conversation with someone who can articulate the process of embodiment. I don't know about you, but I hear that word get thrown around a lot. Embodiment, living, not just thinking, all these kind of words. But today you're going to get some clarity on what that process really means when you are trying to go through a weight loss, body composition, nutrition journey change. So I think you all are going to have a lot of ahas. And we really get into it, including some of, at the most deepest level, what our weight is really about. In my last Truths with Food podcast episode, I got into what our food and weight battle is about at the deepest level. And I heard from so many of you that you found it really powerful. And I really talked about it's kind of about a complicated relationship with power and also emotional safety. And so if you love that conversation or my episode last week, you are going to really enjoy Sas's continuation, essentially, of that. In that episode, I shared about my story about my client, Gina, and realizing that kind of this 20 to 30 pound yo-yo weight gain at its deepest level was about a complicated relationship with power and safety, ultimately. And Sas is going to show how that is true for her, too. So if you feel like there's more to it, and you like to go deep, you're just gonna love this episode. And we also got into body image and how body image really isn't that much about the body. And I think this is really important because in midlife, there is a lot of grief, I think, at least for my clients, myself, a lot of my friends who I chat with, about losing a lot of, what you once had physically, right? Whether it's being able to eat whatever, or eat and not gain weight. For me, it's used to be able to sleep so easily, and now I have to put so much effort into it. For some of my friends who are really into like beauty and all that stuff, it's like, oh, it takes so much work, right? Whatever angle, there's going to be grief. And so Sas and I get into a conversation of how body image is often about unfelt feelings that we dump onto our body, specifically grief. So we chat about that too. So we go all over the place, and I think you're really going to like it. So enough from me, on to the show. And also, if you're really curious about where you are in this process of developmental process of really being able to change your food and body, take my new assessment. It's not like an assessment, a grade. You can't fail or succeed, but it will show you really where you are in your relationship to change, right? Sas has definitely moved through the developmental stages of stage 1, 2, 3, and she's at stage 4, sometimes still back in 3 as we talk about, but definitely moving through to 4 and 5. And so if you're curious where you are, take my brand new assessment. It's at truthwithfood.com/find-your, YOUR-food-stage, or there will be a link into the show notes. So check that out and find out where you are so you can do the right work at the right time. So you're not spinning your wheels, wasting your time, energy, money. No one has any excess of that these days. And now for real, on to the show. Welcome back, Sas, for our last official installation of Body Stories.
Yeah, it's cool, right? How did we get here?
I know. And we were talking aliens and rising consciousness before we got on, which I'm sure we'll bring forward somehow, because we're good like that. So we'll link to the other episodes in the show notes, but essentially the thumbnail is you started last March, like really wanting to take great care of your body. And we will get to the stats. We will make sure that the audience heard your stack of numbers. And you have been on an a nourishing weight loss journey, which has unfolded and surprised you. And I think we last chatted in December. And then because of our schedules and all that stuff, we're talking now about a little over a year of your journey. And just for everyone to know, Sas has not used GLP-1s. I saw people were asking you that on the gram. So this is like an old fashioned, but also updated. So where are you now? Let's just, people, you can listen to the last episode to see where Sas was in December, but what maybe has shifted for you in 2026?
Yeah, I love that question. I'm so happy to be back with you. And I'm kind of excited to be here. I remember when we first met and thinking, we're going to do this over a year. Like, I felt the real, soft and loving accountability of that, to just be in conversation with you over this year in this way has been lovely. So right now I am feeling really good. And I guess I really hesitate to talk about weight because we can talk a bit about what I've learned around, the total fuckery of scale weight. But I'm at my lowest weight that I've ever been as an adult. And that's great. Yay, thumbs up. What I'm also at is my most developed muscle mass. And I'm also in the healthiest place I've been in terms of my relationship with food and with exercise. So, it's been, for me, stripping back a whole lot of diet culture and shitty learning and unlearning so much more than I have learned, I think. And so much of what has occurred and unfolded over the last year has really been about getting really real with myself. I think this has been one of the most vulnerable experiences I've gone through. It's been the thing that has grown me up, possibly the most. And I'm a person who changed career, in my late 30s, I totally changed my career. I, did a graduate degree in my 40s. I've got sober, I've been through, and I've experienced the death of a parent. I've had these really kind of, those kind of Rubicon moments where you're like, who are you going to be after this? This is going to change you in a way that you can't go back. And this is up there with it, which I wasn't expecting, honestly. I was like, I just need to lose a few pounds. No.
Well, and I love that you said that because the growing up, you and I both do developmental work. And I always say to clients, your clients come to you with self-doubt in their coaching practices. And you've also worked with, people who aren't coaches. And my clients obviously come to me with like, food and exercise stuff. But part of what I say to them is like, what we're really doing is developing the capacity to be with more emotions, more complexity. And so this tends to get easier. And so you've done a lot of that capacity building. But what do you think makes it so vulnerable when it comes to bodies?
I know you talk about this a bit, but I think there's something for me now about I live in my body. Like I cannot escape it. It is my primary home. And that also means it's my primary source of safety. And so there is something about the inescapable reality of living in a body with all of its vulnerabilities, right? It leaks everywhere. It's soft. It is, like vulnerable, like physically, like our bones break and, our skin tears and there's all of that physical vulnerability. But I think as well, our bodies are how we move through the world. So it's how everyone else perceives us as well, like how we are perceived, and it's how kind of almost who we know ourselves to be. For me, has always been quite separate to my body. And now it feels like they're merging, like my insides are matching my outsides in a way that hasn't really happened before. So there is this much deeper level of awareness. And I think when you know a lot about a thing or you're kind of deeply conscious of a thing, you can't not be, it's like, and I'm aware that this maybe sounds a little confusing, but I think there's something about it's the water we're swimming in. And so we don't often talk about the water, it's just a thing that we take for granted. And we I think we don't think about breathing, digestion, all of those physical things. But I think we also don't, I said, no, for me, I didn't really think about like, how did my body look? What did other people think? And what did I think? Like I just kind of ignored my body. And so now I have this much more visceral experience of an embodied experience of being alive. I can't not have that now, if that makes sense. So all of that feels vulnerable because it's like, oh shit, this is me, like on a level that I haven't really accessed before.
I was just talking about this in my Truce with Food group, that it's like the second program in the developmental arc that I take people through. And I said, when I was battling food, I was always sensitive, but I was like, oh, that's so upsetting. But now that I'm in my body and I've worked through all that, it's like, oh, things take me out differently, but I also can feel joy and like it's so much more. So yeah, that's to me, for listeners, if you're like, what is Sas saying? Or, I think if you haven't been in your body, that can be really like, what do you mean by that? Because we are, I often say to my clients, like sometimes some of you feel like a bobblehead, right? Or just like a floating head in space, because for many of us who battle food, like we're smart. Let me use this tool, right? Like I'm really good at this tool, which you're obviously brilliant. So I love that saying, like, you can't not live there now. What are the highlights and the pros and cons?
The pros and cons, the highs and lows. So I think I'll start with the low stuff because I was absolutely a bit of a bobblehead and my body was just a thing that was inconvenient, didn't really have a relationship with it, but it got me places, So, but
you're here.
Great. Look down. And I think there's something quite uncomfortable about saying, okay, I am actually going to look down now. I'm going to put some focus on not my brain, which I've always felt was my identity, was I'm pretty smart. I can figure things out. I get shit done. Like all of those intellectual pursuits have come relatively easy to me. Like I kind of like how my brain works, but I didn't even know how my body worked, not really. And so to kind of look down and go, okay, what do you need from me? Like, how are we going to do this? Like felt really uncomfortable. And I think, honestly, that feeling of like, it's a mix, I think, of regret and shame and like confusion and frustration. It was kind of in quite a tight little ball for me. sitting pretty much here on my chest, sorry for the podcast listeners, sitting in my chest, and it kind of felt like if I put focus on my body, I'm going to have to deal with that. Like my choices, all the things I don't know, which when you're a relatively smart person, not knowing stuff feels really vulnerable, right? And just almost like the levels of self-compassion that are required to go, no, I do think this is a thing that I want to figure out. Like I'm prepared to go through that ball to kind of and unravel it to get to what's underneath. So that discomfort still comes up, by the way, from time to time when especially the last few months, I've hit a bit of a plateau, and that has been kind of tricky. Like I'm doing everything. Why aren't things moving? And then of course I go, oh, what's the point? And go back to old habits. And so there's a bit of a spiral to it all. But I think there's something about that really prevented me from getting started, from asking for help, from admitting even to myself that I wanted to figure this out. And I remember last year I said to my partner, I've booked a call with a coach. And this is when I first met Sarah. And I just burst into tears. And he's like, you work with coaches all the time. You are a coach. There must be something else going on here. Like, what is going on? And I was like, yeah, I want to figure out my body stuff, and that has also opened up a really long conversation with my partner, Ash, who, we've been together for nearly 20 years. And I'm realizing just how much my relationship with my body has impacted our relationship, just in terms of like how willing I am to be vulnerable with him is massive, so, and even things like, he's pretty active. He loves to hike. He's really into that kind of stuff. So there was a whole area of our relationship that I did not participate in, and that he very lovingly said, that's okay. We're different. You don't have to. So all of that kind of stuff, like being willing to say to him, I kind of would like, I know I poo-poo all your dumb walks. Like, where are you going? Making fun of you. But I would kind of like to go. And he has always been, sweet, how long do you want to go for? Like, it's more like, what can I do to, help you, support you? Because I want you to live a long, healthy life kind of vibes. And I think there's something about really facing those vulnerabilities around how my choices around my body have impacted my primary, most important relationship, both with myself and my partner, those two biggies, and also like what kind of life I have created for myself. So I didn't ever have to really get out of quite a closed comfort zone. All of that has been really uncomfortable and still makes me feel a whole lot of feelings that I find really difficult, disappointment and shame and regret and, all of that stuff is really freaking hard to be with. So I think I had an inkling I would probably have to go through that. So I never started. Like I was like, well, if I just put it off, start Monday, oh, this is feeling icky, I'm stepping back from it, and the last year I've gone, no, I'm doing it anyway. Like, it's okay if it's a bit shit for a while. And I think in my mind, I thought I'll get through that and then it'll be plain sailing. Haha. Of course, it's a bit of a spiral, right? You kind of walk that labyrinth a few times a month sometimes, but I think
on your video phases.
Exactly. But I think the beauty of it is that you are also growing and learning as you go. So every time you walk through that labyrinth, you're actually doing it from a different place. You never step in the same river twice, that vibe, So that I think that's been the main kind of difficult stuff. The highlights, though, so far outweigh that. Like, I think the level of, like, my whole identity has changed. I think that's the bit that's really surprised me, because I felt very comfortable with who I was apart from this. But because I had kind of like separated my body from me, it was sort of like, I can groove with this. But now that I feel a bit more whole, I feel like the way I see myself and what I'm capable of has completely shifted. Like, what I tolerate for myself, what I expect of myself, the way I appreciate and respect my body is so different. It's so different. It's like, oh, I totally understand. And we went out for dinner last weekend and I watched this woman I very much identified with how she was moving, at her whole energy, her presence. Like I was very conscious. She was in a larger body. The way she dressed was very much to blend in, not draw attention. I was conscious of how much food she was eating. I was conscious of how much she was drinking. And I just had so much love for her. Like I was like, oh, honey, I get it. Like I get that all of this is like just a way to try and create some filling up, like a literal and figurative of you, you know? And I think, you know, I was like, I could only eat half my meal because it was just enormous, you know? But I was like, you know, this is no shade on the chef. I just ordered too much, like, you know, but I never felt like compelled to finish what was on my plate. I ordered stuff that I knew would fill me up and would be tasty. And we shared a dessert. Like I didn't deny myself anything, but the way I approached the whole night was completely different to how I would have in the past. And I said to Ash during dinner, like, I'm really enjoying this night. And it wasn't that it was a night out, but I was like, I had on a dress that I had like taken off and put back on. And I'm still experiencing body dysmorphia, and I'd love to chat more about that. But Ash was like, wow, you look amazing, you know? And I felt really good. Like I believed him because I was like, yeah, I really do. I feel great. And we walked from the ferry over to the restaurant, which was about a mile. And it was like this, I could be present. I wasn't puffed at all. Like it was so fun. And the sun was setting and we got to chat, and then we got to the restaurant and it was beautiful food and I knew what to order and there was no need to worry about anything. It was just the presence that I have now is so different because I'm not in a battle in my head. Oh, am I going to have dessert? Oh shit, what's on the menu? Is it okay? Oh fuck it, I'll just order what I want. You know, that constant secondary conversation you're having, so you can't really be present with who you're with. Like that, none of that was there. And I think that kind of experience happens more and more and more and more. So it's this weird paradox. I am so much more conscious of my body than I ever have been. And all the kind of food noise and the body noise around it all is very quiet and still. So it's like this weird paradox of those things.
Well, to me, I love that you said the word presence, because that's what kept coming to mind of like, when you really do the real work of food and body stuff, you get to be present for your life instead of like almost living outside of it as a reporter and then you actually get nourished by your life, right? If to extend the metaphor that we've been, talking through these episodes of like this paradigm shift of nourishing for yourself instead of restriction, right? It's like, oh, I'm nourished by my life. It's not once I lose weight. It's like right now, right? Or whatnot. And if you haven't learned how your body works, be in your body, it's not like the self-monitoring. I say that people get self-monitoring and self-awareness confused, right? They think that, I always say to my clients, you think you're self-aware, but what you're really doing is monitoring what everyone else is thinking, what you're eating, versus the self-awareness of I'm full, like, or I really want that tonight. Like, it's people confuse it all the time, but it's dramatically different. One thing I want to go back to that you said, I feel like my insides are matching my outsides because, and I'd be curious because again, you are very, there's many reasons I love you, but I know that you can go metaphor, soul, but practical. Like, it's like, you can do all the levels I can do. Right. And there is certain theories that your soul, your body is essentially like a portrait of your soul. And again, the soul doesn't assign value to like thin, fat, healthy, unhealthy. It's just like your expression. And what you were talking about of like, I was pretty, happy with myself in these certain areas. And then it was just kind of like, this is over there, because I take my clients essentially through the deconditioning process, right? Of the socialized mind or, developmentally. And there is this like, oh, I think I'm a perfectionist. I think I'm a people pleaser, right? I think I'm so ambitious, and all those things are true. And though it's like often at the cost of our body, someone else's needs. And so they go through a lot of those hard feelings that you're talking about. And especially, so I have Truth with Food Consistency where it's 3 months of developmental work where people are like, okay, I really get now that this is not about the food and I know exactly what it's about. And then Truth with Food for Good in the 6 months, right? So they're almost they're essentially 3 to 9 months of the developmental journey from socialized to self-authoring, right? And it's like there's grief around. One woman in the group last week is like, I'm having grief around being such a rule follower now that I realize these rules are bunk, essentially. Or I'm feeling so much sadness and disappointment for time lost, or like that I wasted it in that other direction and all that stuff. So to me, it's kind of like they're getting in touch with their real soul underneath the conditioning. So when you say my insides matched my outsides, like, does that track with you? Like your soul was already being expressed, but there was a piece of it that, with soul, they say, let your freak fat flag fly, like, I don't know will you do something with what I just said?
I love this. No, I love this. And one of the reasons I love you is that you're not that interested in the body, even though that's your work. Like, I just love that. So I'm currently reading a book called The Soul's Code by James Hillman, who, if you're a psychology nerd, you may have heard of him.
Yes.
He talks about acorn theory, and it was like a light bulb going off for me. And his premise is, I'm not sure if he came up with this, but he mentions it in the book, that when our souls come into this lifetime, that we are essentially an acorn, and our soul's code is kind of written on that. So the oak tree that each of us become is already kind of like an agreement we've made outside of this incarnation. Now, sure, that's a theory. Who knows if it's true? It appeals to me on so many levels. Like, I love it so much. And, one of my first books that I ever read that was self-help was Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh, right? And he has a beautiful children's book called The Little Soul, which kind of carries this idea that before we incarnate, we have like a soul group of beings that we're connected to, and we all agree to play roles in each other's lives. And then we all go down to earth and have earth school. And then at the end of it all, we go, how was that for you? What do you want to learn next time? Innocent joy with that, but also quite deep psychology to it too. And so one of the things that this has made me think about is this was the body I was always meant to have. Because that's part of my life. Because my body is such an intrinsic part of who I am, my soul in this life was always meant to have this body with all the things that are great about it and I love about it, and all the things that I don't love about it. And so my own kind of idea is that we're just here to figure out who we are and to become kind of fully expressed.
Yeah.
And that looks different for everybody. And I think we're all necessary and we're all needed. Like, that's how I kind of see the purpose of being alive, is we're all needed. Like, you make a choice that has a ripple effect that goes right around the planet. You just don't know. We don't know, right?
Right.
And so what if this was always meant to happen at this time? What if I was always meant to go through 40 years of body weirdness and conditioning and diet culture? I was born in this time in our history and culture. I was born in this country and have lived in countries where that all got reinforced by the culture. So me deciding I'm going to make a change here, it felt like something inside of me, my soul just went, hey, let's look at this now. This is the time. And I can remember I actually had an astrological reading with a woman called Phyllis, who is this ace, Jewish New Yorker. She's amazing. She's like she's like our team astrologer. And she said to me, okay, basically at the end of some equinox in March last year, I don't really take any of it in. I'm just like, okay, what do I need to do? She said, your self-perception is changing, like you're ending a 19-year cycle. It all changes. Go. And I remember thinking, interesting. Okay, well, whatevs. And literally it was like almost a compulsion. I got to figure this out. Now's the time. And so I do think, and I can't explain why this has been so different. I've never stuck at anything to do with body stuff for this long. I've certainly never made this kind of change or developed this sort of habits or relationship in this way before. So I can't really explain why now and why this has worked. What I can say is I do genuinely believe that there are no mistakes. So if that's true, then this body is exactly the body I'm supposed to have. I was always supposed to have it. And that means a level of acceptance, like a soul level of acceptance. Okay, cool. This is what we're working with. Rather than, I think my past stuff was all about, I wish it wasn't this. And I used to get furious with all of these, influencers talking about this peptide or that exercise they do or this regime. And I'm like, it's your freaking genes. Stop it. Like, stop talking about this product you're trying to flog me and just tell the freaking truth. It's your genes, And I do think that is true, right? Like, we are born into a very unique body. And I think one of our, the expressions of our souls is to take care of it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking even with dressing, people put rules on themselves based on, like you said, the woman that you were eating with, right? Like blend in.
Yeah.
But wearing clothes that really feel good and you feel like express you. If we take you have to be a certain size to dress the way you want versus and I think that's shifting a lot. I mean, there's more plus size and all that stuff. But yeah, you can see how I think even indigenous cultures, from the beginning of time, people have used war paint, jewelry, everything right on the body to express, here's who I am.
Yeah.
Now, I'm curious though, because you did say something, now we're going to go to a little bit more practical because I have my own theories, but this is, for most people at this stage, it is harder to quote unquote maintain. People call it maintenance, keeping it up, sustainable results. And yet it doesn't mean you haven't hit a plateau, like you said, and had some stuff, but it sounds like because you've done the deep work, at least is what I tell my clients, it is really messy, but it gets less and less messy every turn around the spiral, right? Every time you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
But why do you think it's actually now become easier to maintain versus in the past you just said I couldn't maintain things? What do you think is at the root of now this is kind of, I'm present, I'm having more of these experiences of just going out and being in my body and enjoying it. What do you think is quote unquote working underneath all of that?
I think that it's about the identity shift. Yes. I don't feel like I'm on a diet or I'm doing a gym program. It's like I brush my teeth 3 times a week. I go to the gym. That's just what I do. It's not, I don't know. It's like I don't even think about it anymore. I actually found the gym quite stressful at the start because I didn't know how the machines worked and I didn't know how heavy I should be lifting.
Not knowing.
So none of that. Yeah, and it's freaking awkward, And because I work with an online coach, it wasn't like I had a buddy to meet me at the gym kind of thing. And I asked so many annoying questions of her. But I think Once I figured out the gym is an adventure playground for adults, it was like something shifted for me. And then it was like, ooh, I want to go on this ride. I wonder how how you play this game. How does this machine work? I wonder how fast I can go versus, like that, what a kid would think. It was like, can I bring a level of play to this? That shifted something for me because I stopped taking it so damn seriously.
Yeah.
And, and just kind of was like, oh, there are actually people here who know stuff. So I'm just going to ask them. So I just asked people, how do you do that? And honestly, like there are lots of gym bros at my gym. And I would just say, take your headphones out. Hey, when you're doing that, like what muscle are you using? And no one has ever said, fucking work it out yourself. Like everyone has been like, oh, I'm doing this and, oh, try that, and it is so adorable. Like, so it has got me out of that kind of comfort zone of the gym is hard. It's for other people. I don't belong here. Like I've broken that identity down to this is my third place. And now it's become my happy place. Like now I'm like, maybe I need to go work out. Like if I'm stressed or I'm feeling a bit flat or whatever, I think I've never not walked out of that gym feeling worse than when I went in.
Well, and I love that because to me, I was going to say, I think the identity shift, the emotional work underneath it. And again, for people listening, part of also why Sas is going to be able to maintain this is she worked to develop muscle mass and she actually changed how she relates to food and exercise. And you can go to the past episodes to hear how she did that.
Yeah.
But it's the identity shift of like, I am someone who does this. And what I heard you just do in that identity shift is change the meaning of exercise, right? It's not punishment anymore. It's not because I overate. It's like, I'm doing this because, and again, it involves relating to ourselves with compassion and respect, but it's like, I'm doing this for my mental health, or I'm doing this because I feel flat. So it's almost, it's the emotional nourishment. And that to me is where really the identity shift, it's like, this can make my life easier instead of being a source of stress.
Yeah. And I think as well, like finding exercise, movement that I enjoy has been a game changer. Because I grew up in the 80s where it was no pain, no gain, where it was, it should feel like punishment. And so, of course, you don't want to do that 3 times a week. No.
Right.
But I think what we're learning as, our understanding of the body improves over time is that actually, lifting weights, that kind of slow, repetitive movement of lifting heavy things is great for midlife women. You never have to do a HIIT class or, like really hard cardio. Like you never have to do that to lose weight. It's, there's a lot of kind of stuff around whether that is even good for you, So for me, like I walk at least 10,000 steps a day and I love that. I love that for me. And I'll do it in all weathers. And I am now kind of in the place of like, how am I going to fit? I usually do a big walk and a little walk each day. And so I just try and like fit that in where I can, and sometimes it means I go and walk on a treadmill and listen to a podcast and it's really freaking dull for half an hour, but that's okay. If it's really rainy or, I just haven't been able to do it. But gamifying it, because I've now, I wear a Fitbit and I'm a bit obsessed with it. And yes, me and my husband do go how many steps today kind of thing and high five each other in bed at night. Like it's kind of fun. But I think all of those things, gamifying it, making it fun, organizing your day so you're fitting it in and sharing it with someone who's supporting you. Like these are like really basic, practical, psychological markers of, getting our needs met. And so I think any way that you can make this fun for yourself, I think as well, the thing that has really shifted now that this just feels like part of my identity is it no longer feels like I'm negotiating with myself around exercise particularly. I still have that with food. If I separate the kind of 2 main sort of factors here around movement and food, I think I have a much easier relationship with movement, which surprises me. that just feels like a thing I do now. I'm a gym person. Yep. I have all the cute outfits. I love seeing my little baby biceps develop. I'm excited about body recomp, and I know what an RDL is, and I know how to squat and all of that stuff. Like, I'm like, yeah, man, I'm on that team. And that feels really fun. My entire Instagram feed is women over 50 who are ripped. And I'm like, that's where I'm going, you know? So it's fun for me to feel like, yeah, that is a part of my identity now that just feels exciting. You know, I want to do a pull-up by my birthday. It is an utterly pointless, really freaking hard thing to do. And I'm like so excited to be able to do it. And I kind of love that for me, you know?
Oh, I love that for you too. And, you know, also just to circle back on the gym, like, and you can confirm this, but I find I freaking love the people I know from the gym. I find gym people are really down to earth. They're just there to feel like freaking alive. And again, I don't go to like any hoity-toity places, but don't you find they're kind of like salt of the earth people that just want like people to feel like really feel good?
Yeah. And they're obsessed. And I kind of love that. It has really changed my relationship with men as well, like men who are strangers. I've always felt, understandably, very wary of men, but I'm kind of like, oh no, he's my gym brother. Like, you know, I say hello to people in the supermarket, you know, and it's like, oh yeah, I know you from the gym. Like, sometimes people are like, what? And I'm like, just work out. And he's like, oh yeah, you know. So it's cool. It's like I kind of love that. Yeah.
So you said you no longer negotiate with yourself. And I know one of the biggest ahas for you was like, I don't necessarily have to feel like working out. I just have to do it. So, because I know for people, if they're in that kind of perfectionist, all or nothing mindset, they might think that I have to feel like doing it every day. And I know for me, most days I do feel like doing it, but there are times where I just don't, you know?
Yeah.
So how do you avoid the negotiation and do so from a place of compassion rather than you got to do this so you don't gain the weight back?
Yeah. I think so. Firstly, it's really like this week I've been in my luteal week, so the week before my period, and I hate that week for lifting because your body strength actually decreases in that week. You kind of feel really flat. Like for me, and I'm finding the closer I get to menopause, please God, let it happen. I think I'm the only woman on the planet who's like, come on already. But I think there's something about like that week that totally nails me all the time. And I just can't feel motivated in that week. So I don't try to. I sort of just go, okay, I'm going to show up and it's going to be the shittest workout ever. I intentionally reduce the weights that I'm lifting. Sometimes I don't do my full program even, but I'm like, yeah, but I showed up for myself. So who cares, you know? And I think that's the one thing that I've really realized is, you know, losing 50 pounds over a year, it's going to require me to consistently overeat and not work out for an extended period of time for me to gain that weight back. Like I trust my body can sustain this loss. So I sometimes I'm like, I'm going to do it tomorrow. But what I try to do is not go more than 2 or 3 days without a workout. It's like, now we're getting into territory we don't love. This doesn't feel good. And what I find now is I spend my whole day thinking about, you know, that I haven't gone to the gym. It would just be so much easier to just go and let it be imperfect and a bit rubbish and have a sorry for myself workout, you know. I've got this, Ash calls it my mental health sweatshirt, and it's a sweatshirt and it's got a sad frog on it and it just says self-care in like children's writing, and I sometimes wear it when I do park run because we just walk that, And people always are like, oh, well done, you finished. And they look at that sweatshirt, and Ash says they think you're here, so that you're not, contemplating, suicide ideation stuff is so funny. And I sometimes will wear my mental health sweatshirt to the gym when I just feel sorry for myself. And I'm like, I'm not even going to get really sweaty, so it doesn't even matter that I'm wearing a sweatshirt. And I've got an inner kid that is having a tantrum, does not want to be there, is not enjoying it. And I kind of just let her have free reign. Like, okay, just show up. I don't care how you do it. It's okay, but you're doing it, kind of thing. So I think there's something about letting go of that perfectionism stuff that has been really, really helpful, because over time it doesn't really matter.
Well, and you will get further showing up imperfectly consistently than like the occasional perfectionism. And in my groups, people are like, it's so relieving that you say just show up with the C+ effort. And it's funny, we're like, the Truce with Food for Good group, which is like, they're now 6 months into this and they're like, oh my God, C+ works. Like, it's like
C+
this revelation
is the best.
And I'm like, yeah. And then once you know how the weights work, once you know how to squat, the C+ shifts, right? You end up doing a little bit better, but it's like, you're going to have shit days. And I think it's these kind of unconscious expectations that it's got to be 5 days a week at 100% or go home versus like, that's not how people who move their body consistently forever actually approach it.
And it's certainly not how those of us with a monthly cycle work. Right? Like, I feel like I now have my period and I feel like a whole different person than I did 3 days ago.
Yeah.
So of course that's going to impact how I show up. Like, I think it's crazy that we kind of ignore that, but it's part of our crazy immature culture that ignores that we even have a body unless we can sell it a product to fix it,
Yeah. Well, this is a good bridge, I think, because you were saying like my relationship with exercise is better than food. I'm still at work with food. And to me, it's almost like they go in tandem because there are polarities. Like exercise is how do I feel strong and capable? And I think food is like this representation of vulnerability. And I think about how even physically, right, 70% of our immune system is in our GI tract because that's a big threat, right? Is there food poison? Like, is there bacteria? Is there, whatever I'm ingesting, right, could kill me. And then Dr. Deborah McNamara in her developmental work, she's like nature designed, like when you are hungry, it's a really vulnerable place and you're really supposed to be filled up with connection. Like food is kind of the thing that gets you there, but it's really like, I always say, what nature designed it for was like belonging with the side of food, And so I think of it as food. You said it's like really hard stuff because I think it's ultimately food in our body are about our relationship to vulnerability in general compared to, I don't know, does that land at all or does it?
Yeah, totally. And I think as well, because I'm currently living in New Zealand, and I've got a whole life in the UK, right? That's where I've lived for 20 years. And we're going back there in a month, but we've lived here for 2.5 years. I don't have any close friends here. I do have family, but they're mostly in Australia. And my husband's family are here, but it's not like we're besties. We're good friends, but it's not the same. So the places where I can be really vulnerable have shrunk massively, which I think is why it has... for our marriage, it has been quite a tricky time where it's like, whoa, actually, if I'm vulnerable with you and I don't have anywhere else to put that, I'm just going to find all the things that I'm, all of those vulnerabilities get really concentrated. And, for me, that was really tricky for a while. So food, I think, has always been my safe place. It has never let me down since I was 8 years old and I discovered I could sneak food into my bedroom and no one would know. And that sugar has always been my go-to. So part of this journey has been about, can I let myself feel the feelings rather than eat the feelings? And I'm still learning how to do that. And I think I have a greater level of compassion for myself around that. And sometimes I'm like, it's fine, honey. Just eat the chocolate. Like you're not going to put that 50 pounds, that is not living in this bar of chocolate, But most of the time, I'm pretty good at using food for the purpose that it's designed for, 80% fuel, 20%, it's about connection and sharing and, pleasure and, nourishment on a different level. But I still kind of feel that. And I think a lot of it is exactly what you're talking about. Right now, I don't belong to feel belonging to very many people. And so there's a lot of like heightened concentration of food as a source of comfort. And can I find other sources of comfort rather than food? Because that actually will nourish me more than those additional, calories.
Well, and they'll support you with the real vulnerability that's happening of like, and you said you wanted to talk about body dysmorphia, and we were kind of boxing about it, and it's funny because it's also come up in my group this week. Obviously I'm not a body image expert per se, right? I mean, that's not how I bill myself, but food and body are very connected. And it has come up in the Truth with Food for Good group this week. And I was trying to like intellectually explain that from a depth psychology lens, body image is rooted in like when we don't feel certain feelings, we kind of dump them onto our body. And so I think of weight loss as like this kind of shadow container. Like, and if you think about it, we even go, once I lose weight, then I will. And what we're most deeply saying is then I won't feel this, right?
Yes.
Or once I lose weight, I'll be confident. I remember some clients say, I'll feel like I'm guns blazing, or, right, we even talk about having hard bodies, right? It's like protection against our softness, our vulnerability. And I was explaining to one of my clients who's going through a very big griefy period. Like her two youngest twins are leaving the house. She's moving states for her husband's job, right? And there's other things. And I was explaining this intellectual concept, right? Like our body kind of becomes this dumping ground. But after you and I were voxing and I was thinking about her, and I was also explaining to her that in 2012, I had like an episodic depression. It wasn't the chronic stuff from my gut health. And I was going in for depression, and I worked with a visual imagery therapist, and now I have language for it. It was essentially grief work. Like I finally had the capacity to really get to the core wound that like a lot of my, stuff that I don't think I don't want to say the word strong enough. I just don't think I had the capacity yet to like deal with that. But I told her, I said, I came out of that. My body image issues were gone after that. I didn't go in for that. But I'm starting to think that maybe the biggest emotion that we offload that creates body dysmorphia is grief. And do you think like, and we can have pockets here and there, but I think we often don't have, like we can have body dysmorphia for an evening or whatever. But I think of what you're going through right now, like you're getting ready to leave and you have so many mixed feelings about that, right? You're also like getting ready to do a TED Talk, and there can be happiness in there, but it's also like lots of feelings, and there may not be grief tied with that. But I'm starting to think a lot of like the root emotion of body dysmorphia is grief that we want to offload. How does that land for you?
Yeah, I love that. What it makes me think about is, the anger iceberg that the Gottmans talk about, how anger is the little peak of the iceberg that's over the water. Under the water is all of the things that sit on top of anger, sit underneath anger, right?
Yes.
I actually think grief is the same. I think there's a grief iceberg, and then underneath all of that could be all the kind of root causes of the grief.
Yes.
So I think about, and I've certainly found that with, well, just to bring another lens on it that might help explain the body stuff. So I had a really problematic relationship with my dad growing up. He wasn't present. He was very young. He was grieving as well. And so my primary male relationship as a straight person, mostly straight, with my dad, any of us completely straight? I'm losing that idea. So 80% straight me is like focused on my relationship with my dad, because that I didn't have a great template for that. All subsequent relationships with male friends, with lovers and partners, has been kind of guided by that insufficient template. And so I think there's a part of me that has always been grieving what that relationship never was. And so when I met my partner 18 years ago, he is just an oak tree of a human.
I love that.
He's got his own shit as well, don't get me wrong. But there is something very safe and solid about Ash, and he will always tell me the truth. And my dad never was able to do that. Like he has a personal mythology that does not bear any resemblance to my reality. So when I first met Ash, having been through a really horrific divorce, he scared the shit out of me because I didn't trust myself to show up for the relationship. I didn't think I had the capacity to do that. And I honestly feel like I've been dancing around that and kind of getting close and then pulling away and getting close and pulling away for years. And in the last year in particular, I feel like we're in a new phase of our relationship because I now feel safe enough to be known, like really known by him. He's always been pretty like, this is sweet. I know this is a big deal for you. I've always been here. Like, you know, and so the quality of the conversations that we have these days is qualitatively different around the level of vulnerability. And it still scares the shit out of me because I'm like, oh, this is getting into like really sharing core wounding stuff. And what if I'm too much and not enough? And all of those stories that we tell ourselves. So I wanted to share that lens because I think one of the things that my changed relationship with my body is also doing is I feel safe in my body without all the padding. Right? In the same way that I'm feeling safer in my marriage without all the padding of here's what I bring and here's how I help and all of my contributions and, you know, I've earned my place, you know, whereas with my body, the padding was more around a kind of, you know, extra pounds that gave me a sense of physical safety. And for sure, there are connectivities and correlations between these two kind of places in my life, like, you know, the padding was there so that I didn't, you know, men didn't find me attractive, so then they couldn't hurt me. You know, there's a bit of that in there too, for sure. But I just share that because I think for a long time, I've felt like there is a if I didn't have this padding, then I would be so much more vulnerable. And I couldn't really explain it. It just felt like danger. And so every time I started to lose weight or, you know, commit to exercising and a restrictive diet at the time, at some point I would start to, you know, fall back into old habits and I couldn't really explain why. And I think it's because it started to not feel safe. Ironically, because I was trying to create some safety through my actions, like rather than feeling it, you know? So I think now I have such a deep level of trust and safety in my body. It's allowing me to be more vulnerable in my life. Yeah. And, you know, in different areas. So it's like I've created the safety. So now all the other stuff is coming up. You know, and I think in the past I've always thought, oh, this is a sign to get the hell out of here, you know, and now I'm like, oh no, it's only coming up because I've created enough safety that I have the capacity to be with it.
Yeah. I mean, that's what, you know, again, holding that paradox, right? We can only take risks if we have safety, right? We have our own back or other people who we can come back to after we go out and we go, well, that was kind of good, but that kind of sucked. Help me.
Yeah.
Sas, this is why I love talking to you. I mean, again, we're talking about the body, but to give language and be able to intellectualize that is that is so it. And, Truth with Food is actually rooted in the heroine's journey, which is healing the feminine, but it's distorted from an unhealthy masculine patriarchal culture that we're all conditioned to. And I just think it's brilliant that you can see, like, to use a health word, like the mechanism of action, right? Of like, oh, this is the real dynamic that was happening. And I think that is so true about a lot of people and I think people think, oh, if I just get to my issues, the weight is going to melt off. And it's like, like working through the stuff is part of building the safety that you have for yourself. And, I just want to say, because I can hear the thin privilege, fat bias crowd saying, look, not all that doesn't mean that we are saying all bodies are meant to be smaller. And it's
not at all.
No, I know you're not saying that, but I know people who don't know us and the conversations that this conversation tends to bring up in those crowds, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So I'm just trying. I mean, we're both Libras. I'm trying to be diplomatic here.
I get it. Well, and the other thing I would say is that I think this is the thing that is so fascinating to me about body image, is that it isn't actually about how your body looks. It's
not at all.
It's the meaning you make about how it looks, right? And that is influenced by so many things. But one of the things I just love the body positive movement for is really like breaking down the idea that only a body that looks a certain way is a good body, right? Like the body positive movement has been so necessary for, it's all needed, right? And so I have friends who love being the size they are and living in much bigger bodies than I ever was. But for them, it's like, but this is who I am, right? That's what was written on their acorn.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's them fully expressed. And I think, oh, that is beautiful. Like I think that's the other part of that, is the peace I feel around not comparing, I think is where they're at. It's like I no longer compare my body to anybody else. And a really close friend of mine is a professor, and her special kind of topic is body image. And she is such a lighthouse for me, Professor Philippa Diedrichs, who has, by the way, written a book called The Body Confidence Workbook for Kids, which is amazing if you want to share that with your kids. But Phil always talks about body image doesn't live in a mirror, it lives in your brain, like, and in what you make that mean. And I think that has absolutely been my experience on such a visceral level.
Yeah. I have just okay, so here's a little identity question, because a lot of what we've talked about. Well, okay, first of all, I want to go back for people who are listening. One thing that I thought was really important just about grief that I just want to put a little bit of an asterisk that came up in our group is grief. And Sas communicated this excellently. A lot of times people think grief is just loss, but we were talking about Francis Weller's work about how grief is also what you didn't get. Yeah. And so I just wanted to put that there for people who are like, I don't have grief. Like I didn't have tragedy, but it's like, it can also be for what you thought would happen. I think midlife, I've reckoned with certain things that I thought would be different now. Right. And they're not. And so it can be a lot of things, but one last question then, because you talked about this identity shift. And I know in my groups, I have some clients on GLP-1s, some aren't, but it came up about how a lot of people are triggered by people who, the line that stuck out in our group yesterday was one woman was saying, I'm just seeing my friends who never had weight issues and they're like wasting away. Right. So we had a really good political conversation about fascism rise and thinness and the correlation. But as a result of these GLP-1s, I've seen people that you and I both know who have been like, I'm in a bigger body and I love it. Right. And one person in particular, I'm obviously not going to name names, but who wouldn't even allow me in a mastermind because I said I've always been neutral about if people want to lose weight, but they've been very fat positive. And again, I think it's all great. There is no health is so complex, right? It's just not, you never know how healthy someone is looking at what they look like. But then it comes out. So now a lot of us who have followed these people, right, and been learning from them, it comes out that they're now doing GLP-1s and, sometimes it was health related, but sometimes now some people are coming out I did the shadow work, I did the deep. So how does someone know? And again, this will be different from everyone and you can't tell other people, But how do you think people can suss out for them if they're asking this question for themselves versus this is who I am and I'm very proud, but then maybe secretly, this is what I'm telling the world I'm proud, but then maybe I feel actually disconnected. I don't know. It's more of like philosophical. Like to me, there's some nuance there.
Totally. Well, and I have such a lot of compassion for anyone who's decided they're going to use GLPs. Personally, it wasn't right for me just because of the heart condition I have. The research isn't there yet around the safety stuff for long-term use, and I do think it requires long-term use, as we're starting to see. In the same way that you come off a diet, you come off GLPs, most people are putting the body weight back on. So there's a ton of compassion I have for anyone who just wants to quieten the food noise and allow themselves to stay in a calorie deficit. And so they will lose body weight. I think that's the thing we have to think about. If that's what you want to do, to lose body weight, then GLPs can be the right solution for you. Obviously, they're there for other reasons as well, but I think if that's what we're talking about. What worries me about the use of GLPs is, when will you know that you've reached the weight that you want to weigh, and who decides that's good for you? Like, it's going to be you, right? Like, it's totally you're an autonomous being. But if you don't look at how you have come up with that number, then I really worry about women wasting away. At the same time, I think it's none of my business for each individual woman. That's a personal choice.
Holding the hand.
Yeah.
Holding the hand.
And I think it is really worrying when we look at, award shows and the commentary is all about who's on Ozempic, and Ozempic face is now a thing. And so people are having surgery to repair loose skin on their, it's like, the whole idea that it is a personal choice, I think, is worth looking at, because I don't know how much of it actually is an autonomous choice if you're not questioning, why am I making this choice? And what is my end goal here? And so, but that has always been the case, right? We've always tortured our bodies in the name of beauty. Like that's something that women have always done, and increasingly so now men are. And I've just learned about looks maxing, and that is freaking terrifying. Anyway.
What's looks maxing? I live under a rock.
Young men who will do anything to they're basically following the same track as the beauty culture that women have been subjected to. Some of them are using, I've seen one guy who will hammer his face to break up the bones so that he gets better cheekbones. There's a New York Times article, I think, which, New York Times, but I think it's worth kind of having a little Google on, because I think it shows us that in much the same way diet culture was never really about women, it was about capitalism.
Yeah.
Same with the beauty industry, and same with how men are experiencing it now. It's all the same shiz, So I think when it comes to GLPs, it can feel like a personal choice. What I really want people to know is all it's helping you do is stay in a calorie deficit. And if we don't have muscle mass and good habits to support that, then it means that at the end of you taking that drug, which is suppressing your appetite, and by the way, the positives of GLPs is that it's also suppressing things like addictions and gambling and drinking and all kinds of things. That's a really interesting finding. But we also find it's suppressing joy and aliveness and a sense of, there are some interesting trends that are coming out around experiences of depression, and because it basically is not just suppressing your appetite for food, it's suppressing it for life, it feels to me. And I think we haven't really wrestled with that, I don't think. So I know it feels like an easy, quick fix. I don't think anything is when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah.
So if I was going to take GLPs, I would be going for minimum effective dose and I wouldn't increase it. And I would be looking for support to, build muscle mass, get good habits in place, delve into why I was overweight in the first place and what I really wanted to achieve by losing weight. And I think that is the thing that I'm now really excited about is I don't even know what my goal is anymore, right? Like
I freaking love that because that's
like I'm like this and I want to do a pull-up, right? And I want to keep exploring my relationship with food. Like, are there things I can do at certain times of the month that would actually support me better than, just reaching for the chalk? I'm really interested in, increasing my vulnerability in my marriage. And what does that actually lead to? So far, great things, right? Yeah. I'm wanting to explore, like, when I'm no longer worried about hiding my body from the world, what does my life contain? What does it look like? I'm really excited to kind of look at how can I increase my muscle mass? Like I'm kind of getting a bit competitive with myself around, I'm now doing like 50 kg trap bar deadlifts, which I'm starting to feel comfortable. And I'm like, oh, how far can I go? Because I had a frozen shoulder a couple of years ago, like chest presses have always felt a bit hard, but I'm now getting up to kind of 20 kg. And I'm like, okay, can I start using the bar? So when I get back to Bristol, I actually want to work with a weightlifting coach to see where I can go with this. So I'm still in a calorie deficit. I still, want to get a little leaner. Like that is important to me, but it's no longer tied to a scale weight for me. It's actually about body composition. So what's my muscle to fat ratio, which, it gets a little more technical and it's harder to measure and all of that shiz. But I think one of the things I've realized is that the scale is telling me such a one-dimensional response because my scale weight will change, within 10 minutes because my body is completely dynamic. And I've weighed myself every day for nearly 400 days and it goes like this. But overall, the trend goes like this.
You're separating this, you're seeing the signal instead of the noise, right? Exactly. Of the fluctuation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I love that because it's like, again, technical change, smart goals. And now it's like, and to me, again, that's another signal of presence of like, here's where I'm at now. And here's what I want to explore, right? Like I didn't know these would be my goals at this point, right? But I'll see what happens after that. And so you're really like connected into that source of like what Sas's soul, right? Of like, here's what my soul wants to experience next. So, but I do know the people are going to wonder, so what's your total weight loss and how will you know when enough body composition changes enough?
Yeah. So I work in kilos, not pounds, but I've worked it out. So I've lost 52 pounds, which is just over 20 kilos.
That is amazing.
Which is great, and it means nothing. Do you know what I mean? Like in terms of relativity, it means nothing. But what I am is I'm now in overweight BMI. Like I'm slowly coming down. I was at like 37 or something, and now I'm like 29, which is great. My doctors, because I have a complex heart condition, have said the work I'm doing to take care of myself is about 66% of the total healthcare package. They reckon the medication that I'm on is doing about 30% of the work.
Wow.
Which I find wild because I just want to also say no heart doctor has ever talked to me about any lifestyle changes except for don't eat salt. So it is wild to me that they are now saying, oh, everything you're doing is massively supporting your heart. This is fantastic. If every patient did this, the health, our jobs would be so different. And I'm like, why the fuck aren't you talking about it then? Why don't you talk about this, And I think they see that as like, well, I'm a heart surgeon. I do sexy stuff. I'm all about medication. I'm all about surgery. Whereas preventative healthcare is not their bag. And for me, there is a huge distinction between like medicalized care and health. Like there is such a distinction. It's not the same thing. It's like justice and law, very different things, right?
Yeah, it's great.
And so I find it wild. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. I feel like I'm really interested in staying in a calorie deficit for maybe another 5 kilos, 10, 12 pounds. That feels like then I'll be kind of under 75 kilos. I'd like to be in the early 70s range, which is around about 160 pounds, I think. I'm 5'7", that feels like a, pretty good thing. But then I'm also increasingly interested in like body recomposition. Like then what do I do with that? What do I do with that 73, 75 kilos? Because that could be leaner, that I could get stronger. I can, it's a playground, I get to play. But right now, I can live my life in a really satisfying way. I'm buying clothes that I feel really excited about and good in. I still look in the mirror and I can't compute. Like I see things that I'm like, is this real? Or, I literally cleaned a full-length mirror last week because I was like, I don't think this is true. Like I couldn't, it didn't feel right. So I'm still kind of catching up with how my body looks now to what it used to look like. I walked into a shop. I hardly ever buy clothes in person. I don't actually love shopping. But I walked into a shop a couple of weeks ago and I came out and I was wearing this top and I said to the young woman in the store, I said, what do you think? This feels, I don't know if I like this. And she was like, oh my God, let me get you the right size. And she got me like 2 sizes smaller. And I was like, oh yeah, this totally fits me better. I still didn't like it. I didn't buy it. But it was like, oh, that's interesting. Like I'm still dressing for a body that doesn't exist anymore, So there's something about that I think I just think over time that will dissipate. But yeah.
Oh my God. Well, we'll definitely have to have you back on maybe in like 6 months or something to just see how it's all going. But thank you for sharing our journey and your journey and being able to articulate so many of the breadcrumbs that are necessary for health and feeling alive, right? Like not getting to the end. Like what I love about this the most is that like you are more you. You are more full of yourself, right?
Yes.
Physically, you're satiated. Emotionally, you're finding new parts of yourself. Soul is more expressed. And you're like, I just love that you have more vitality because most weight loss approaches are about shrinking, but it doesn't have to be either or, right? It can be this more fullness of life and vitality. And you are bringing the receipts, as the young kids say. So is there anything that I forgot to ask or that you want to say before?
No, I really want to say just such big love to all your listeners. So many people have reached out to me on Instagram and just had like little DM chats about things. I honestly feel like we need more of these kinds of conversations about just the complexity of living in a body and feeling uncomfortable in it and wanting to change it and all of the voices that get in our heads about whether we should and how we should do it and all of that stuff. And it's one of the reasons why I just felt like, no, I do, even though this is kind of vulnerable and exposy, it's, you're one of the few people that I would ever trust to have these conversations with, Ellie. And, I just think your work is so important and it's so difficult, I think, in this culture to have these nuanced conversations. And I think because your work straddles so much of the physical, the intellectual, but also like the soulful and the shadow stuff, like is a conversation that I think not many of us know how to have, let alone know the value of it. And so, I just think anyone who wants to explore this kind of work is in such good hands with you.
Oh, thank you so much, Sas. Yeah. Hopefully with Uranus and Gemini and our consciousness shifting, right? we'll jump timelines.
Let's hope. Yeah. I have faith in us.
Yeah. If the aliens get to us sooner, I'll have more faith, right?
They're going to be the grown-ups in the room, I swear.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sas, for your time.
No, you're so welcome.